Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Mel. Thank you so much for joining me today for the end of the year book tag. So the name of this tag is a little bit misleading in that it sounds like it ought to be done at the very end of a year, but it's actually designed to be done in the sort of last quarter of the year so that you can talk about your plans for the rest of the year or the end of the year. It was originally created by Ariel Bissett, so I will put her channel in the description below. Anyone else that I talk about in this video will also be in the description below, so you should go and check them out, subscribe, all of that sort of thing. So without further ado, let's just get started. So the first question is, are there any books that you have started throughout the year that you need to finish by the end of the year? I have a few answers to this question. The first book that I started, I think earlier in May, was Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I was enjoying the book, but I put it down because of other book-ish reading commitments, and I just haven't got around to picking it back up again. Honestly, although I was enjoying the book, I was finding that it was a little bit slow going, so I don't know whether or not it was potentially the mood I was in as well. I'd like to pick it up and finish it by the end of the year. Whether or not I do, as with any of these books, remains to be seen, but potentially that's when I might restart by the end of the year, hopefully. Another one is The Silence of Scheherazade by Daphne. I can't remember the author's surname, but all of the images of the covers will be on the screen so you can see the author's names anyway. This was one that I started in July, and I think I got about 2/3 of the way through that one, but then, as you guys probably know if you've been around for a little while, I ended up coming down with COVID and I got really sick with it, and so I just didn't feel like reading it while I was sick or for the kind of week or so afterwards. That was near the end of the month, and so other TBRs, etc. Then we have Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. I have totally forgotten who wrote that book, but again, it's on screen. This is one that I was supposed to read this month in September. Yeah, I should have been reading it this month. I started it, I read probably about 10 pages. Definitely want to read it, but it just hasn't been something that I've prioritized this month, which is probably not great because I did say that it was something that I really ought to read, but I've just not been really in a non-fiction mood very much this year, so yeah, it hasn't been picked up, but I would like to read it by the end of this year as well. Then we have Fantasy of Frost. I'm so sorry, Lana, if you're watching this video. I've just not managed to read this book. It's been put on a number of TBRs. I started it probably about a month or so ago. There's no reason why I didn't continue it. It just didn't happen. It's again the same thing I've been saying. Lots of other books to read, priorities with book clubs and different things like that, and yeah, unfortunately it's just got sort of put on the wayside. Realistically, it probably belongs in another question, but technically I have started it, so that's why it's here. And I'm just trying to think if there were any others. Yes, there is also the sort of Kaigen, and again, gosh, this is terrible. I've totally forgotten who wrote that book as well. This is another one that fell victim to me having COVID and just not being in the mood. Definitely want to read it, but it's quite a dense fantasy. I've heard that it's amazing, but I was just finding it a bit tricky to get into, and I think maybe it's just that, again, I was in a bit of a mood where I wasn't necessarily wanting to read that kind of tricky high fantasy, so hopefully I'll read it by the end of the year. We will see. But yeah, those are the books that that I'm partway through or that I've started that I'd really like to get finished by the end of this year. Question number 2 is, do you have any autumnal books to transition you into the end of the year? The short answer to this question is no. The long answer to this question is I live in Australia and we go into spring this time of year and then summer at the end of the year, which is a whole other conversation about when the end of the year, what that means and everything like that, from an agricultural perspective, blah, blah, blah. But we're going to spring, but because the publishing industry and the marketing industry and everything is predominantly controlled by the Northern Hemisphere, and particularly sort of North America and Europe, the assumption seems to be that because it's autumn, everybody is going into an autumnal mood, and so everything's marketed as autumnal, going into winter, get yourself ready for winter, all of that sort of thing. So therefore the industry is marketed that way. But that's the opposite of the season that I'm going into. So it's not something that I've ever really considered. Don't read seasonally, and I think the predominant reason for that is because books that come onto my radar are like the opposite season or theme or mood to what I would be in were I to think about the season, if that makes any sense. So yeah, no, because I live in a different part of the world to where the majority of the people marketing for books and publishing would think about when they would do that. So yeah. I also don't really do the whole spooky book in October thing. I don't really do Halloween. It's not something that I grew up really participating in. When I was a child, I was a child in the 80s. In Australia, it really wasn't a thing at all. I mean, it certainly was something we were aware of, and some people did it, but the people that did celebrate Halloween were kind of outliers. It wasn't in supermarkets. You didn't get decorations or anything like that in supermarkets. And so when those books were released, when things were released in the Northern Hemisphere that were marketed as a Halloween thing, the marketing was different in Australia. It wasn't focused on Halloween. So I don't really participate in Halloween. It's just not something that I think about when I think about books. So I don't read seasonally, etc. Anyway, let's move on to question number 3. Is there a new release you're still waiting for? Yes. I'm still waiting for Silverborn, which is the next book in the Morrigan Crow series by Jessica Townsend. It was supposed to be released around nowish, but it's been pushed back, I think, until January next year. So I'm not technically waiting for it because I know it's been pushed back, but I only found that out in the last month or so, and I was very disappointed when I found that out. So that's something I'm still waiting for. You know what I mean? Still excited for, looking forward to. I'm not really a massive person that kind of keeps on top of new releases when things come out. I find out a lot more now that I've been involved in BookTube for a few years, and I watch obviously lots of different BookTubers. People talk about books coming out, so I get a lot more information about that and I'm a lot more aware of it. But even so, I'm not, generally speaking, sitting around waiting for something, unless of course it is a continuation of series that I really, really enjoyed, like the continuation of the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. So yeah, Silverborn is the answer to that question. Question number 4 is, what books would you like to read by the end of the year? So again, I have a few answers to this question. First of all, I'd really like to read Crooked Kingdom, which is the second book in the duology by Leigh Bardugo, the first one being Six of Crows. So Six of Crows I read a couple of months ago now, and I did really, really enjoy it, and Crooked Kingdom is the one that comes after that. It is a Grishaverse, or they are, I should say, Grishaverse novels, so they are in the same world as the Shadow and Bone trilogy. Yeah, so I'm excited for reading Crooked Kingdom. Like I said, I enjoyed Six of Crows. Another book that I've put on multiple TBRs and just for whatever reason I haven't got to, that I am actually looking forward to reading and do want to read. I really enjoyed the first one, but again, just haven't prioritised. Is The Disappearance of Ember Crow, which is the second book in the Tribe series by Amberlynn Quay Molina. The first one is the interrogation of Ashala Wolf, and they are post-apocalyptic dystopian novels set in Australia, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, I'd really like to read at least the second one, if not both the second and third one, to finish out the trilogy. And then the last 2 books in the quartet, An Ember in the Ashes by Sabah Tahir. So I've read An Ember in the Ashes and whatever the second book is called. And then, yeah, I've got the other 2 books to continue and finish off the series, which I do really want to do and I just haven't got around to yet, which is, I feel like, the story of everybody in BookTube's life. But yeah, that's something that I would definitely like to do by the end of the year. Hopefully I will. And then I also have Electra by Jennifer Saint, which is a Greek Greek mythology retelling. So it is about Electra and a bunch of other different women involved in the Trojan War. I really, really enjoyed Jennifer Saint's book Ariadne, which is a feminist retelling of the myth of Ariadne and the Minotaur and Dionysus. And so I think that I'm going to really, really enjoy that one, and I really want to read that by the end of the year. Which transitions me very nicely into question number 5, which is there a book that could still shock you and become your favourite book of the year? And I think that Electra very much could become one of my favourite books of the year. Potentially my favourite book of the year, but I certainly think it would be up there as one of my favourites. It wouldn't shock me though, to be perfectly honest, because like I said, I really enjoyed Ariadne, which was her first book, I'm pretty sure. And so, yeah, I think Electra is something I'll probably really enjoy too, and therefore it wouldn't really shock me if it became one of my favourites. I have recently acquired quite a few books which are kind of feminist retellings of the Trojan War and the repercussions of the Trojan War. So I also have The Silence of the Girls and The Women of Troy by Pat Barker, and 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes. I think any of those would be fantastic books that I really, really enjoy. Don't know if they'd shock me again, because I'm very interested in the topic, but I do think they could potentially become favourite books of mine. I've heard really good things about all of those books, so yeah, I think that potentially they could shock me and become favourites of the year as well. The last question, this was a lovely short tag for you all. The last question is, have you already started making reading plans for next year? Yes, I have 2 books that I'm definitely reading in January next year, because at the moment I am running the Graceling series read along with Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany and Cara from Wild Book Garden. And this month in September we are reading Fire. We are reading Bitter Blue in October. We are reading Winterkeep in November. We're taking a break in December, and then we are reading the most recent books that will come out in November, Sea Sparrow, in January. So definitely know I'll be reading that in January. And then my book club that I run with Ellie and Lana, the Last to Read book club, we have decided to read the second book in the, I don't know actually what the series is called, but we read The Witch King by H.E. Edgman a couple of months ago, and then we decided to read the second book, The Fae Keeper, I believe it's called, so obviously by H.E. Edgman, in January as well. So that's for the Last to Read book club. Not really sure what's happening with the Tarrying Through Time. That's something that we've been working on with Paige from Pages with Paige, Cara from Bianca Reads, and someone else who I can't remember. We've been working on the Tearing Through Time, and I think a few other people, Erin from Shebas and Shelves has been joining us as well. But it's sort of on pause at the moment. We may pick that up again next year. I just recently borrowed the Rainwild Chronicles off a friend of mine. I'm not sure if they'll get to that at the end of this year, or they would really like to. But definitely I'll be reading that next year as well. I say all the time that the Realm of the Elderling series is one of my favourite series of all time by Robin Hobb. That's them there. But I've never read the Rainwild Chronicles. I don't know why, but I just couldn't really get into the first book. And I feel like maybe I was... So for those people who don't know, it's a series of books written with... trilogies, and then this quartet, the Rainwild Chronicles, that form their own kind of mini-series within the whole series. So it starts with the Farseer trilogy, and then Live Ship Traders is about a whole bunch of different characters, and it is in a different part of the world. And then we go into the Tawny Man series, which then goes back to the original characters from the Farseer trilogy, and then we go into the Rainwild Chronicles, and I was expecting to go back to the characters from the Live Ship Traders and essentially pick up where we left off, but it doesn't, and I don't know if that's why, but I just found that I couldn't get into it really well. But it's been quite a while since I read the rest of the series, which I absolutely adore, but in the past, I've tried to read them all in one go. So this time I'm going to read the Rainwild Chronicles independently, and hopefully I will get into them and really, really enjoy them, because I've been hearing amazing things. My friend that I borrowed them off said that they were absolutely fantastic, and he absolutely loved them, and he thinks I will as well. So yeah, that's definitely something I'd like to read. Potentially some this year, but definitely next year as well. I'd really like to reread The Way of Kings and then read the rest of the Stormlight archives that are currently out by Brandon Sanderson, because I read The Way of Kings last year, I think, and then just didn't continue with the series. And Way of Kings is really dense. If you know Brandon Sanderson, you would know that, and I just feel like I need to reread it to really get myself kind of prepared to continue with the series, because there's a lot going on in that series. But I would like to read those, so I'm thinking next year might be a good time to do that as well. So no like specific month by month plans or anything like that, but definitely a few things that I'd like to do with my reading next year. So yeah, that's the final question, and that is therefore the end of the tag. So I'm not going to tag anyone, because I feel like this is the kind of tag that people either do or don't do as part of their kind of regular yearly plan for their YouTube channel. So, but if you would like to do this tag and you want to say that I tagged you, then go right ahead. Please do comment below if you have read any of the books that I talked about, whether you enjoyed them, whether you think I will enjoy them, what your plans are for the rest of the year. Do you have any specific plans for next year for your reading or your channel? Please comment all of that below if you want to. If you'd like to leave me a comment but you don't know what, then leave me something kind of nature, because when people talk about autumn, they talk about the turning of the leaves and autumn leaves and all of that sort of thing. But I'm going into spring, so you could leave me something autumnal or something spring as an emoji if you would like to do that as well. All of my social media details are listed in the description below, so if you'd like to go and follow me on any of those other platforms, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.